Hey everybody, Becca Mowry here, and I'm so glad you're tuning in. This is our third video that Pastor Adam, keyboard, piano extraordinaire, is kind of doing for us to give us some basics about the keyboard. We learned different ways to mix different patches, and in this video, we're gonna learn some chord voicing. So this is great for everybody. Gives you some basic chord voicings on how to really be an effective keyboard player in worship music. So check it out.
Hey everybody, I'm back here. It's Adam with Becca, and we're just talking about keyboard playing and piano playing. And today I want to just talk a little bit more about the musical side of playing the keyboard on the worship team. First thing I would say is, obviously there are these moments where we play these songs. They're the piano-based songs, and there's like this important melody you got to play, right? Like I think about, one of those kind of Forever or whatever it is. And you got to learn how to do that. You got to practice that. Those are not that many of our songs, to be honest with you. There's a few, and maybe it's like one a set. The rest of it is really learning to play chords well and learning to maybe add some filler between your chords. And that's like the majority of our time, right? And so I want to talk to you a little bit about chord playing and how to do that well. Obviously, learning your chords is an important thing to do. And on piano, there's lots of different ways to play chords. And so I want to just talk to you about some options on how to do that. Now, when you're first learning chords, I'm reminded of, let's say, music in the 50s, where there are what you kind of block chords, and they're usually in root position, which means like, the root, the third, and the fifth. It looks like that. It's just a triad. And you think about it, I think about like Earth Angel, like. And what happens is, the style is actually to take your chord and to move it in like parallel down and keeping that same, what we call root position. See how I'm doing that? It's like you're just moving your fingers down. Now, that's really good for 50s music and certain things, but almost no other kind of music, because it just really draws a lot of attention to the changing chord. You can just hear it changing. Now listen, there are times that it calls for that, and if you listen in the music, you're gonna hear whether it's that kind of change. But really what starts to get exciting is when you start learning what we call inversions. And with inversions, you're making the minimal amount of changes to your fingers and notes, and you're trying to keep the chord changes as smooth as possible. So let me just give you an example of what that might look like. So on the piano, root position is like this. Then they call first inversion, you take the C, this is a C major chord, right? And you put it on the top. And then you do second inversion, which you take the E and you put it on top, right? And now if you do that again, you're back to root position. So that's, you get root, first inversion, second inversion. Okay, now all of the chords you can practice that way. So if you did A minor, let's say, right? That's root, then you got first inversion, second inversion, and you're back. Okay, so watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to play a C major, and this is in that second inversion. I got the G in the bottom. Now I'm going to switch to G major. If you noticed, only two notes changed, and they just moved very subtly. So it sounds... Now, if I were to go to A minor, it's up. If I were to go to F major, I could go like this, and I'm barely moving my fingers. I'm maximizing the closeness, which is really important. Now, I hear a lot of folks doing this in the church, and that's great. So this is just learning inversions and learning how to minimally move your fingers to get to the next chord. And you do that because it creates a very smooth sound, and it doesn't bring unneeded attention to the piano. It's just kind of good arranging, good voicing. Now I wanted to go a little bit further than that though. I wanted to talk to you about what I'm calling common tones. This is really popular in music today, and it requires your brain, but it requires your ears just as much. So here's an example of it. I'm going to use the same idea of being in C major. I'm going to choose to play G, C, and G. Okay? I'm going to just start that simple. Now what's interesting is if I were to play C in the bass, this is a C chord. I'm not even playing a third, so I don't know if it's a major chord or a minor chord. Okay? It's just this. Now, everyone else in the band is probably playing the third or not, but watch what happens now. If I move my bass to A, I went from playing a C chord to an A minor chord. but I didn't change my right hand at all. Now, how is that possible? Well, look, this C is the third of the A minor. This G is the seventh. So that sounds like A minor. Now watch this. I move my bass to F. Now this is an F chord. I say F chord because look, I've got the C, which is the fifth of F, and I've got the G, which is the second from F. Look, 1, 2. Now I'm going to move my bass to G. Now I'm playing a G sus chord. The C is the fourth, the G is the root. All I did was change my bass and the chords are changing. Let me do it again. Now watch this. If I get rid of the piano, watch how smooth that sounds. And what's nice about it is that it's like a drone on top. It's just very smooth. It's not bringing any attention to it. The only one I have to be careful of is the G sus, because if everyone else is playing a G major, I'm going to get that kind of tension there, which isn't necessarily bad. I listened for that. But this is the majority of my playing. I am trying to keep as many common tones from one chord to the next, and it creates a really nice sound. Now, you can get a little bit more advanced. I'm going to show it to you, but I would suggest to you, if you're interested in this, just to call me, because I'd be willing to sit down with you and talk to you about how this works. Let me just play something, and maybe Becca can kind of see my fingers on my right hand in particular. So now I'm going to add a D. This is the second. And I want to tell you that most chords today have seconds in them. They don't get in the way, they just add color. So how do you play a second? I'll just take a distraction for a minute. Watch this. There we go. I'm playing. I can even play the third at the same time. I do that a lot. This is one of my favorite chords. Second and the fifth. Sounds really nice, and you can practice that. Listen to the second with A minor. This is another one of my favorite chords. You probably hear that when I play. Okay, so let's go back to where I was. You hear that C chord and it has a D in it, so that's the second, okay? Now watch this. If I switch to G, that still works because that's the fifth. Now if I switch to A minor, I'm going to probably get rid of the D because that would be a fourth. Doesn't sound good in the A minor. And then when I go to the F, I'm going to move my G to an A, but keep the G up top. That was minimal change. I just did that because I like the sound. Now I'm going to go to A minor. I'm going to add the B, but look, I kept the C and the G. That's never changed. Now I'm going to go to G, go to F. So you can see I'm doing like minimal changes. Look at that, my fingers are barely moving and I'm switching chords. Let me just watch C, here's a C chord, here's a D minor 7, here's a C over E, here's an F, here's a G, I switched a little bit, there's an A minor. So look at this, I'm switching chords like crazy and you hardly even know, and my fingers on top are staying the same. One of the reasons I like that is because oftentimes your ear is drawn to the highest note of a chord. So if I go like this, you're hearing, and I want to avoid sometimes people hearing that, so I keep my highest note the same, and I move all my lower notes. Which is really great. Okay, let me know if you want to talk more about that. The other thing I would just say is when we're doing gospel music, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something like this, where I move my inner voicing. Watch. And that gets fun when you can learn how to play around with your inner notes. You're keeping a lot of things the same. Another good to talk to you today. I want to talk about the inversions, where we talked about how to maximize moving your fingers in a small way as possible, and then really taking that further and talking about common tones, where you're adding a lot of color to your chords, but you're barely moving your fingers and allowing there to be a real interest by the sounds that are the same. So, great, good to talk to you today.